The fog had been rolling in since 4 p.m., thick and smelling faintly of rotting kelp, but by midnight, it had completely swallowed the coast. You could barely see 10 feet in front of you. You shouldn't have been out there, but the fight with your partner had left your apartment feeling suffocatingly small. The beach, usually a place of comfort, felt entirely different under the cover of a moonless, overcast night. The Pacific was unusually quiet. No roaring waves, just a rhythmic, heavy slap hiss against the wet sand. You walked close to the waterline where the sand was packed hard, the cold water occasionally swirling over the tops of your sneakers. The only sound was the crunch of your own footsteps and the distant, muffled groan of a foghorn miles out. Then you heard it, squelch. It was a wet, heavy sound just a few yards ahead of you in the gloom. You stopped. The sound stopped. You took another step. Crunch. From the fog ahead, squelch. It was mimicking your pace, but the texture of the sound was wrong. It didn't sound like a boot on wet sand. It sounded like something dense and unprotected being dragged. "Hello?" you called out. Your voice sounded flat, instantly eaten by the fog. No answer, just the slap hiss of the black water. You decided to turn around. You weren't a character in a horror movie. You had no desire to investigate. But as you spun on your heel, you realized the fog had thickened behind you, obscuring the cliffs that led back to the parking lot staircase. You started walking back the way you came, faster this time. Squelch, squelch, squelch. It wasn't ahead of you anymore. It was to your left, out in the surf. You stopped and stared into the black water. The tide was low, exposing the jagged, dark shapes of the tide pools and rock shelves. At first, you saw nothing. Then, the water receded for a brief second, and a shape materialized out foam. It was a man, or at least it had the silhouette of one. He was standing knee-deep in the freezing surf, completely motionless, facing the shore. Facing you, he was wearing beach clothes. Even in the dimness, you could tell he was wearing a heavy, dark, formal suit. It was soaking wet, clinging to his frame, the fabric sodden and dripping. "Hey!" you said, your throat tight. "Are you all right?" The man didn't move. He didn't blink. In fact, as you strained your eyes, you realized his posture was utterly wrong. His head was tilted at an unnatural, sharp angle, resting almost flat against his left shoulder, as if his neck had been broken. A wave hit him, hard enough that it should have knocked a standing person over. He didn't stumble. He swayed rigidly, like a buoy anchored to the seafloor, his limbs loose but his torso fixed. Every instinct in your body screamed at you to run, but your legs felt like poured concrete. Then the man took a step forward, out surf. He didn't walk. He dragged his right leg behind him, a useless dead weight, while his left leg lurched forward with a sickeningly jerky, mechanical motion. Squelch. With that single step, he entered the faint perimeter of light from a distant, fog-shrouded street lamp up on the cliffs. You caught a glimpse of his face. There were no features. It wasn't that he didn't have a face. It was that the skin was entirely white, bloated, and wrinkled like fingertips that had been submerged in water for days, but stretched across a whole skull. His eyes were wide open, milky white and clouded over with cataracts, staring blindly into the dark. His mouth was stretched open in a permanent, jaw-slackened yawn, and as he moved, a dark trickle of seawater and black sand spilled out over his chin. He wasn't breathing. There was no rise and fall of his chest. There was no vapor coming from his mouth in the cold night air. He took another step. He was entirely too fast for someone dragging a dead limb. Squelch. You finally broke the paralysis. You turned and sprinted toward where you thought the cliffs were, your shoes slipping terribly on the wet sand. The silence of the beach was instantly shattered by a terrifyingly rapid sound behind you. Squelch, drag, squelch, drag, squelch, drag. Whatever it was, it had dropped to all fours. The wet, heavy thudding of its limbs on the sand was gaining on you with impossible speed. It sounded like a massive, waterlogged sack of meat being hurled repeatedly against the ground. You scrambled blindly up the first loose rocks of the cliffside, scraping your hands raw on the sandstone, tearing your jeans as you hauled yourself upward. You didn't look back. You climbed by pure adrenaline, throwing yourself onto the asphalt of the empty overlooked parking lot above. You sprinted to your car, fumbling wildly with your keys, dropping them once, scrambling on your knees to grab them, and diving into the driver's seat. You slammed the door and locked it in one fluid, terrified motion. Safe. You were inside. You threw the car into reverse, your headlights cutting through the thick fog, illuminating the empty pavement. You took a ragged, sobbing breath, leaning your head against the steering wheel, your heart hammering violently against your ribs. Then you heard it. Drip, drip, drip. The sound wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the back seat. A thick, overpowering stench suddenly filled the warm car. The smell of stagnant ocean water, rotting kelp, and old, cold decay. You froze, your eyes locking onto the rear-view mirror. In a reflection, rising slowly from the floorboards of the back seat, was a pale, bloated head, tilted sharply to the left. The milky eyes stared straight into yours through the glass, and a heavy, wet hand, gray and wrinkled from the sea, reached out to rest gently on the headrest next to your ear.